September 15th, 1963 at 10:21 a.m. A bomb goes off under the stairs of the 16th Street Birmingham Baptist Church, injuring 20 and tragically taking the lives of 4 young girls. Hello, Nerderers, and welcome to another episode of Nerder, where we take history and true crime and nerd out. And if you're new here, I don't even try and lie to y'all. You will see me look at my notes because I don't even pretend to have all this memorized, and I want to make sure I get things correct because, yeah, can't memorize it all. So, Klansmen had planted a bomb under the steps of the church near the ladies' room. So, picture this. The pastor is walking up to begin the service. Maybe the praise music has started. Maybe people are still sitting. Maybe they're standing. And all of a sudden, a bomb just rocks the entire church. Windows are shattering. Bricks are flying. People are screaming and terrified. It's probably full of smoke. And then comes the aftermath. People screaming, looking for their families, children, wives, husbands. I cannot imagine the terror these people must have felt. So this bomb, it exploded under the side steps of the church. Very few people thought this was an accident. This was not the first act of terror in this city. As a matter of fact, Birmingham was starting to get the nickname Bombingham. I think that is tragic in itself. This was the third bombing in 11 days. So 3 bombings in 11 days. Why was this? Because the Supreme Court had just mandated the desegregation of schools in the South. Specifically, this is why I have my notes, specifically Alabama schools. So this was 11 days after federal court had mandated the integration. Y'all. The integration of Alabama schools. Why was this? Because Governor Wallace absolutely was not going to allow the integration of Alabama schools. He was absolutely opposed. There is a famous picture of a standoff, basically between him and the president. Seriously, JFK eventually mobilized the National Guard. So, anyway, the March on Washington had just occurred 2 weeks earlier. And that's where Dr. Martin Luther King gave his famous I Have a Dream speech. Well, all those who thought it wasn't an accident were absolutely correct. You see, the bombers had hidden a stack of dynamite under cinder blocks on the east side of the church, next to the basement, near the girls' restroom. Most of the injured parishioners were able to stumble outside and get to safety. A frantic search began for survivors and anyone else who was injured. Sadly, the bodies of 4 young girls were found dead beneath the rubble in the basement. Addie Mae Collins, age 14. Denise McNair, age 14. Carol Robertson, age 14. And Cynthia Wesley, 11 years old. Y'all, I have a 14-year-old daughter, and I have 12-year-old daughters. I have triplets. I cannot imagine the grief, the sickening, gut-wrenching grief these parents, siblings, loved ones must have felt. Now, by some miracle, Addie's sister, Sarah Collins, age 12, was rescued by a deacon and managed to survive. However, she was permanently blinded in one eye from glass shards. More than 20 others were seriously injured and required hospitalization. The bodies of the 4 girls were carried out in covered stretchers. But why did this continue to happen specifically in Birmingham? Well, the current Alabama governor, the amazing, that's sarcasm, George Wallace, as I previously mentioned, was a staunch opponent of integration. He did not want desegregation of black and white people. And Birmingham possessed one of the most violent chapters of the KKK, and that would be chapter 13. It's in my notes, but I believe it's chapter 13. The city's police were notorious for their brutality, especially against black people and especially against black demonstrators. The Ku Klux Klan chose the 16th Street Baptist Church specifically because it was used for all kinds of local and national civil rights movements, even drawing leaders like Martin Luther King. The KKK routinely called in bomb threats to disrupt these civil rights meetings. After the Birmingham bombing, and I love this because he's absolutely correct. After the Birmingham bombing, Dr. King wrote George Wallace a letter, and in that letter it said, quote, "The blood of our little children is on your hands." And he was absolutely correct. The tragic death of these 4 girls in a church on a Sunday morning it sent shock waves throughout the United States and drew international attention specifically to Birmingham. Many white people were outraged, offered condolences, and 8,000 attended the funeral of 3 of the girls. Even Reverend Martin Luther King spoke passionately, fanning public outrage across the country, as well people should have been outraged. In the days following the blast, thousands of angry black protesters gathered outside the church, and I will give you one guess what happened. The good Governor Wallace sent his thugs, the police, and state troopers to break it up, and violence erupted. Protesters were again arrested, and 2 young black men were killed. Finally, the National Guard was called in to help restore order. Certain Birmingham white supremacists were fingered immediately as suspects, but all the cries for justice went unheard and unanswered. How could 4 young black girls be murdered on a Sunday and everybody just go back to business as usual in Birmingham on a Monday? The FBI office in Birmingham launched an investigation that dragged on for 5 years. In 1965, a memo was, there's a 1965 memo where Thomas Blanton, Robert Chambliss, Bobby Cherry, and Herman Cash are named as the 4 primary suspects. All 4 of these guys were members of what was considered the South's most violent Klan chapter, Chapter 13. They were also responsible for the 1961 Freedom Riders attack. The investigation ended in 1968 after 5 years with 0 indictments. You see, these guys were scary. They were clearly not adverse to murder, and people were scared of repercussions. So people wouldn't come forward. They were terrified to talk. So FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover said, quote, "The chance of prosecution in state or federal courts is remote because there wasn't enough evidence." Now buckle in, because it just keeps getting worse. It was more than a decade before authorities took action. In 1971, Attorney General Bill Baxley reopened the case. He got the FBI evidence and somehow convinced these witnesses who wouldn't come forward to talk. He charged Klan leader Robert Dynamite Bob Chambliss with murder. Does that not tell us everything we need to know about this person? He was convicted in 1977 and died in jail in 1985, never admitting guilt. He never copped to the killing of these 4 girls. And I'm going to move so you can see these beautiful babies. I mean, how do you just take the lives of 4 little girls like that and feel nothing? That's more terrifying than anything, I think. It gets worse. 38 years after the Birmingham bombing, Thomas Blanton Jr. was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison in 2001. A year later, Bob Frank Cherry, who had actually bragged about setting the explosives himself, was also convicted. His ex-wife and his son testified against him. Now, we don't victim blame here, and I don't think it's a leap. This guy was a murderer. It's not a leap to assume he was also abusive. So she was probably terrified of him. She did end up coming forward. Yes, it was years later, but do with that what you will. The 4th suspect, Herman Cash, died in 1994 before he could ever be brought to justice. So the U.S. legal system, to say they were slow in providing justice to Birmingham's Black community, would be an understatement. The after effect of the bombing itself was swift. These men planned to strike fear into people, to stop the civil rights movement, and it actually ended up having a completely different and opposite effect. It led to the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Take that, haters. They were signed into law by President Lyndon Johnson. So, in that sense, we can take some cold comfort from the fact that this horrific tragedy brought the civil rights movement to the forefront. It became the center of attention. The 5th little girl, Sarah Collins, who survived the attack, that was blind in her eye from the glass shards, she never left Alabama. She lived there with her husband, George, and she never forgot her older sister, Sarah. Apparently, she had lots of pictures of her, but do you know she never got any financial or medical help from the city or the state? After everything we've talked about, are we surprised? Really? She blames Governor Wallace for what happened, for inciting the violence with his inflammatory remarks, and I'm inclined to agree with her. Sarah did write a book about her experience called The 5th Little Girl, and she traveled around doing the occasional TV interview. She spoke at schools, she spoke at churches, etc. You know, this is just my opinion, but hate has no place. It really doesn't. We can see videos all over the place, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, of what hate is doing to people all over this country and all over this world. And I'm not talking about one group. I'm not talking about a specific political party. I am talking about hate in general. It sucks. It leads to tragedy. It leads to violence. And it doesn't fix anything. It doesn't help anything. And usually what people use their hate to achieve ends up backfiring on them. Just my 2 cents. So if you like history and you like true crime, go ahead and stab that like button. hit subscribe, be kind to each other, and until next time, stay safe out there.